By the time he turned 50, Russian novelist Leo Tolstoy had everything most of us would consider a wildly successful life. He'd written War and Peace and Anna Karenina, two novels that stretched and reshaped the boundaries of literature. Tolstoy had a massive estate, hundreds of staff, financial security, excellent health, a wife, 13 living children, and the kind of literary fame that brought fan letters from strangers in 20 different languages. Tolstoy had, by any external measure, won at life, and he wanted to end it all. In an autobiographical book called A Confession, written in his early 50s, Tolstoy describes hiding a rope so he wouldn't hang himself from the beam between the closets in his dressing room. He stopped hunting alone because he was afraid of what he might do with the gun. By his own account, he was a man at the apex of every imaginable form of human flourishing, and he could not get out of bed without wondering why he should bother. What Tolstoy discovered, and what most of us learn only after being knocked around a bit, is that getting everything you want can be the most dangerous thing that ever happens to you. When the thing you thought would finally make you whole actually doesn't, you're left with a question you can't unask. What have I been building my life upon? The first commandment names this trouble with unsettling precision. You shall have no other gods before me. It's the first commandment, and it's not first because God is insecure. It's first because everything else in our lives bends toward whatever we choose as our foremost object of worship. The command is less a demand than it is a diagnosis. It's God telling us what we're about to do to ourselves before we do it. Most of us, if we're being honest, would never describe ourselves as worshiping anything other than God. We don't bow to statues. We don't pour out drink offerings to household gods like some people in the Bible did, nor would we even know how. But we do organize our lives around something. We do reach for something that gives us peace, identity, and worth. And if that something isn't Jesus Christ, it will always be something else. Paul saw this in the first century and named it directly. Writing to the church in Rome, he described a pattern that's been true ever since Adam and Eve fell in the garden. Human beings, though they knew God, did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. The result? They exchanged the truth about God for a lie and worshiped and served the creature rather than the Creator. That is the human story in a single sentence. We've never stopped worshiping. We've just started worshiping the wrong things. We took good things, real things, genuine gifts from a generous God and asked them to be our ultimate things, our surrogate saviors, our counterfeit gods. And nothing finite can bear that weight, because nothing finite was designed to. Tolstoy was not the first person to discover this, and he will not be the last. What makes A Confession worth reading still, more than a century after the fact, is that he did the entire experiment in public. He'd been given comfort, control, and approval in degrees most of us will never experience or understand. His novels were brilliant, but the work of writing them did nothing to quiet the restlessness of his heart. His family was real, but his love for them couldn't answer the deeper questions he was asking. His fame was global, and the more famous he became, the more hollow it felt. To borrow a lyric from 9 Inch Nails, it all came down on him like an empire of dirt. It let him down, and it made him hurt. Like the man in Ecclesiastes, Tolstoy had gotten everything, and then everything got him. 3 false gospels prevail in our age and in our hearts. Like the serpent in the garden, they sneak up on us and try to convince us that they're on our side. All of these 3 false gospels come wrapped in a convincing disguise. They feel, at first, less like idolatry and more like wisdom and life. The first of the 3 is the gospel of comfort. Its sermon is short. Pain is the enemy. Avoid it, numb it, get away from it at all costs. Arrange your life so that nothing difficult ever touches you, and you'll know you've arrived. Comfort is preached every 15 seconds by the device in your pocket, by the wine glass that slides from a one-glass treat into a three-glass coping mechanism, by the streaming service that protects you from sitting quietly with your own thoughts. It promises peace, but what it delivers is sedation and numbing. The second one is the gospel of control. This one flatters us with the promise that if we plan well enough, save aggressively enough, parent strategically enough, and curate our circumstances tightly enough, nothing bad will happen to us. Control says risk is for foolish people who aren't paying attention. It says you can engineer your way out of vulnerability and getting hurt. What control delivers eventually is exhaustion, because the world is not under your thumb, and it never will be. And somewhere beneath all the anxiety, you already know that. The third is the gospel of approval. This one is the hardest to see because it disguises itself as love. Approval says you're worth what other people say you're worth, and no more than that. So you read every room. You manage and curate your image. You laugh at jokes that you don't think are funny, and you participate in activities that bother your conscience. You take 15 selfies and post the one that's most flattering, even though you know it's the least true. The idol of approval promises worth, and what it delivers is a slow disappearing of the self, until you're no longer sure what you actually think or who you actually are. Each of these three false gospels asks a good thing to become an ultimate thing, and each of them snaps under the pressure. They have to, because only Christ can tell us who we are. Only Christ can give us the safety, the love, and the meaning our hearts keep reaching for. At the very end of his first letter, after pages and pages on love and light and the assurance of salvation, the Apostle John signs off with a single abrupt warning. Little children, keep yourselves from idols. That's the whole closing line, as if coming from a friend who grips your arm at the door as you're heading out into life-threatening weather. And here's where it all leads to. Jesus Christ does not compete with these false gospels by offering a slightly better version of comfort, control, or approval. He offers what none of these things can, himself. To those of us who are drowning in the gospel of comfort, he offers a peace that transcends all understanding that the world cannot give and the world cannot take away. To those who have become strangled by the illusion of control, he offers a Father whose providence, whose sovereignty is wiser than our planning, and whose love does not depend on our performance. And to those who are starving for approval, he offers the only verdict that can ultimately satisfy the hunger. The words spoken over him at his baptism and now spoken over us in him. This is my beloved child, with whom I am well pleased. Tolstoy spent the last 30 years of his life still wrestling. His faith was erratic and complicated, and he did not always land where other believers would land. He was less a settled theologian than a wounded seeker, trying to make sense of God, death, conscience, and the ache for meaning. But Tolstoy never went back to believing the three lies that had once nearly destroyed him. He'd seen them too clearly and tasted them too bitterly for that.